Breaking, Rosenior has been sacked. City overtake Arsenal for the first time in 200 days. Yamal and Esteval could now miss this year's World Cup, whilst Trump's envoy seeks to replace Iran with Italy at this year's tournament. This is DMAC Daily. Hashtag open to work, am I right? Never a dull day at the ongoing circus that is Chelsea Football Club. For Rosenior, it's the end of an era. A 4-month stint of frequent errors. 106 days the streets will almost certainly forget. Granted, his short-lived tenure actually started relatively well. 7 wins in his first 9 games. Very similar to Graham Potter's previous reign in many ways. Like Rosenior, he'd come in as the replacement for a very well-respected manager. People also forget that he too lost just once in his opening 11 games in charge, only for the wheels to completely fall off in the months ahead. But focusing on Rosenior, and whilst I'm surprised at the speed at which it's all capitulated, this always felt like an appointment destined to fail. Sure, Maresca had his fair share of legitimate criticisms when he was in charge prior. Remember, in his final 10 games, he only won 3 of them, but most Chelsea fans still entrusted in the Italian. After all, he won Chelsea their first title of the Bluecoat era, then exceeded expectations further, having guided the Blues to the Club World Cup. So to sack him mid-season for any manager would have been controversial, but to replace with Liam Rosenior, a man whose managerial CV was nowhere near the level required of a supposed elite club, that was an astonishing move to begin with. Rosenior had never won silverware or coached in the Premier League. There was no credibility in this appointment. The fan base did not respect him at all, so the second results deviated, he was the ultimate scapegoat. Now, that's not to suggest that Rosenior wasn't personally responsible for this sudden deterioration. That UCL display against PSG was demoralizing, and now Chelsea find themselves spiraling in 8th place, having lost 5 straight league games without scoring a single goal, hitting a 114-year low in the process. There's no way to cherrycoat that calamity. After the Brighton result, the situation was untenable, yet I still firmly maintain the belief that whether it be Rosenior, Maresca, Pochettino, Potter, Tuchel, whoever, no one can really succeed at this club long term as long as Bluecoat continues to operate at their current capacity. Like, this model is not rational whatsoever. Their decision making is directionless. Their recruitment is embarrassingly negligent. The financial recklessness of it all is nauseating. They've now committed £4 billion to the project in its entirety, and Chelsea are objectively worse off for it. In fact, they are now at an imminent risk of full-blown financial turmoil if they don't qualify for the UCL. Maybe my GOAT Callum McFarlane can imminently course correct in the final 4 games. But who knows where this club is headed? Perhaps Cesc Fabregas takes over, Felipe Luis maybe, and Andone Raiola is probably the early frontrunner for the job, someone I rate highly considering his success at Bournemouth and Rayo Vallecano. But how would that hypothetically translate to Chelsea? That's anyone's guess. Remember, at the beginning of the season, Thomas Frank was one of the most sought-out names in English football, and now he's a literal meme following that Spurs disaster. Rosenior's reputation has definitely taken a similar hit. I don't think any top-flight club in England will be keen on the LinkedIn philosopher anytime soon. However, I also don't think he'll be struggling to pay rent for the foreseeable future either. After all, Chelsea committed him to a 6.5-year contract in the first place. Incredible foresight with that decision. I'm yet to see any credible sources confirming his termination payout, but one can only imagine his bank account is going to be looking nice in the weeks ahead. Before we move on, and hopefully not talk about this embarrassment of a club for a while, I want to quickly touch on the players, because the final nail in the coffin yesterday came after Chalobah, one of these senior figures on the pitch, publicly pushed back against Rosenior's criticism of the team's work ethic, saying things like it's got nothing to do with effort and that they ran their socks off. But look at the statistics, man. In all 34 of Chelsea's games this season, they have been outran by their opposition and have also covered less ground than any other side in the league. And to anyone dismissing these stats saying, well, Chelsea tend to dominate possession, remember City have the league's highest possession statistics, yet also have the highest distance per game average. These Chelsea players are way too comfortable with mediocrity. This is what happens when you reward a bunch of spoiled kids with enormous contracts having accomplished very little. The standards at this club are consistently unacceptable, and I keep reiterating, That is the result of a woefully incompetent ownership. But guys, what's your take on the current situation? I'm curious as to how the Chelsea fans are feeling, and also the hate watchers too. You must be eating good right now. Staying in the Premier League, and for the first time in 200 days, Arsenal no longer sit top of the Premier League as Manchester City overtake their title rivals with 5 games remaining. Unbelievable to think the Gunners were 9 points clear just 12 days ago. Now you may be wondering why City are actually ahead of Arsenal. Their goal difference is the exact same after all. Well, the difference is that City have scored more goals for than Arsenal have. So for now, they sit top. But Pep's side may feel slightly disappointed following today's 1-0 win away at Burnley. Sure, 3 points is 3 points, but having registered 27 attempts against one of the worst sides in the league, that could prove to be an opportunity missed. Haaland scored a classy goal early on, but then proceeded to be uncharacteristically wasteful for the remainder of this contest. Yes, it was also an almighty performance from Dubravka in goal, but the point still stands. City should have scored 4 or 5 today, and this title could inevitably be separated by goal difference. As for Burnley, today's loss confirms their relegation from the Premier League. Knowing Burnley will probably see them returning straight back to the Prem around this time next year, unless they go full Leicester, that is. Now, it remains to be seen whether Scott Parker will keep his job. Look, I'm no expert in regards to this club, although I do remember saying on match day 1 this season, they're guaranteed to get relegated because the recruitment was just not ambitious enough. So I don't think anyone's surprised with their current reality. Elsewhere in the Prem, and what a thriller Bournemouth v Leeds turned out to be. For starters, Kroupy scored his 11th goal of the season, equaling Wayne Rooney's record for a teenager in the Premier League. This is the next superstar of French football in the making. Wouldn't be surprised to see him at the World Cup in 50 odd days time. Leeds equalised in the second half via the long throw before a late strike from another Bournemouth wonder kid, Ryan, made it 2-1. Evan Nilsson thought he'd secured all 3 points for the Cherries late on, but his goal was chalked off by VAR, and in the 97th minute, another long throw from Leeds. The ball pops up to Longstaff, who then bangs it home on the volley to salvage a draw, taking their points tally to 40 for the season. Daniel Farke, take a bow. He has done an unbelievable job. Leeds have only lost 1 game away from home since early December. Fair play, this club has well and truly locked in. Moving to La Liga news, and Barcelona go 9 points clear of Real Madrid following a narrow 1-0 victory at home over Celta Vigo. It was a mixed evening for the Blaugrana, technically job done on the pitch. However, Lamine Yamal's bizarre injury from the penalty spot definitely dampened the mood. He slotted home the pen but was unable to continue. Now, as of recording, we're yet to receive confirmation about the severity of the injury, but there has been a lot of talk that it could be a hamstring tear. I really do hope it's nothing too severe. It would be a tragic scenario if he were potentially ruled out of the World Cup. This guy is the face of the Spanish national team and is also the most valuable player in the entire world. Joao Cancelo also suffered an injury in this match too, so despite the victory, it wasn't a great day for Barca overall. It was for Getafe though, the anti-football kings, with another classic performance, spoiling the party in Sociedad in peak Bordelas fashion, taking all 3 points on the road without registering a single shot on target, leapfrogging Sociedad in the process, where they now sit in European contention. Incredible stuff. In other prominent European fixtures, Bayern advanced to the DFB Pokal final thanks to goals from Kane and Diaz. They'll now face either Stuttgart or Freiburg in the final. Company's side are inching closer towards an illustrious quadruple. Meanwhile, their upcoming opponents in Europe, PSG, could go on to achieve an even greater accomplishment, a quintuple. Yes, the French giants have already taken home the Super Cup, the Intercontinental Cup, and the Trophée des Champions in 25-26. That UCL first leg commences next week, and today they moved one step closer to Ligue 1 glory too, dispatching of Nantes 3-0 to go 6 points clear of Lens. Kvaratskhelia with a brace, and Golden Boy Desiree Doué also bagging himself a screamer. In the Coupe de France, a brace from Loni Eliawahi sees Nice advance to the final at the expense of Strasbourg. They'll now face high flyers Lens in the final. And in the Coppa Italia, Lazio have reached the final, prevailing over Atalanta in a wild penalty shootout. Despite failing to convert their opening 2 spot kicks, backup keeper Eduardo Motta delivered a stunning goalkeeper performance, saving 4 consecutive penalties to guide his side to a 2-1 shootout victory. And now for some quickfire news to close out today's ep. And like Yamal, Esteval's World Cup also hangs in the balance at this stage. There are conflicting reports about the severity of his recent hamstring injury. It would be another devastating blow for this tournament if one of Brazil's and world football's brightest young talents weren't to participate. The Athletic are reporting it's a grade 4 hamstring injury, which is the worst case scenario possible. Speaking of worst case scenarios, and Serge Gnabry is also officially ruled out of the World Cup following an adductor tear in his right thigh. Heading back to England, and John Stones is set to depart Man City at the season's end following a 10-year spell at the Etihad. Moving to Asia, and Cristiano Ronaldo's Al Nassr move one step closer to continental glory, having eased past Qatari club Al Ahly in the AFC Cup semis. Kingsley Coman, the hero, bagging himself a hat-trick. And last but not least, Donald Trump's envoy reportedly seek to replace Iran with Italy at the World Cup. Sounds absolutely absurd, but yes, that is a real headline. Yes, US Special Envoy Paolo Zampoli, who coincidentally happens to be of Italian descent, confirmed he suggested to Trump and FIFA President Infantino that Italy ought to replace Iran at this year's tournament. Now, in a normal world, something like this seems utterly implausible, but we do in fact live in the worst possible timeline, so something like this wouldn't actually surprise me in the big 2026. Anyways, guys, that's all for today's DMAC Daily. See you next time.